11 o'clock in the morning. Gulf of Oman, 40 nautical miles east of the Strait of Hormuz. The water is flat, hazy, the kind of glare that washes out a camera and fries a lookout's eyes. Somewhere inside a corridor of legitimate tanker traffic, a ghost is running. This is a hypothetical scenario built from real capabilities and real tactics for education. But every system you're about to see is real. Every number is real. And the tactic the ghost is using has been documented in this exact stretch of water. The tanker is 280 meters long, riding heavy, fully loaded. Its automatic identification system transponder is broadcasting the identity of a Maltese-flagged chemical carrier that is, at this moment, sitting in Rotterdam. Its radar profile is indistinguishable from 20 other hulls in the lane. Its crew has been running dark for 6 hours. No radio, no deviation, no mistake. On paper, it does not exist. But paper is not what a P-8A Poseidon reads, and in about 40 minutes, this tanker's captain is going to find out that anonymity in the modern Gulf isn't about what you broadcast. It's about whether your broadcast matches what physics says you are. It won't. To understand why this matters, you need to understand what CENTCOM's blockade actually is. This isn't a wall of warships stretched across the Gulf. That's not how you control 90 square miles of open water. What CENTCOM built is an information cordon, a layered sensor architecture where every hull in the Gulf of Oman is tracked, cross-referenced, and scored for anomaly. 10 ships have already been turned back, not sunk, not fired upon. Turned back because a boarding team climbed aboard and found the cargo didn't match the manifest, or the flag didn't match the registry, or the route made no commercial sense for the vessel class. 10 ships, 0 rounds fired. That is the metric CENTCOM is running on. The Strait of Hormuz handles roughly 20% of the world's seaborne oil. When CENTCOM announces a blockade here, it isn't a tactical inconvenience for Tehran. It's an economic tourniquet. The Shadow Fleet exists specifically to keep oil moving when official channels close. These are older vessels, often flagged through third countries, ownership buried under layers of shell companies in Dubai, Hong Kong, and Sharjah. Their weapon is not a missile, it's paperwork. And the best version of that paperwork is AIS spoofing. Broadcast someone else's identity at someone else's position while you move quietly through the traffic. Here's what most people miss about AIS spoofing. It works well against a surface ship. A destroyer sitting at sea level has a radar horizon of roughly 20 nautical miles. Inside a busy traffic lane, 20 miles of radar coverage means you're tracking a dozen contacts at once. You can see a hull. You can't easily tell which hull is which. That's what AIS is for. If the AIS says it's a Maltese chemical carrier, and the radar blob roughly matches the size of a chemical carrier, a surface ship will typically move to the next contact. The horizon does the rest. Too much traffic, too little time, too many legitimate ships to shadow chase on instinct. That is the tanker captain's entire theory of survival. He's not wrong about surface ships. He is very wrong about what is flying 26,000 feet above him. The P-8A Poseidon is a Boeing 737-800 airframe rebuilt from the ground up for maritime patrol. The U.S. Navy operates it as its primary long-range anti-submarine and surface warfare aircraft. And the system that matters here is its ANAPI-10 multimode radar, a surface search radar with a detection radius of roughly 200 nautical miles. Not 20, 200. From altitude, the P-8A doesn't have a horizon problem. It has a data sorting problem, and that's what its mission systems are designed to solve. Think of it this way. A destroyer at sea level is trying to read individual book spines in a library from the doorway. The P-8A is floating above the library looking straight down at the entire floor plan at once. The crew of this particular Poseidon has been on station for 3 hours, orbiting a racetrack pattern that keeps its radar footprint centered on the primary inbound shipping lane. They are not looking for a specific ship. They are looking for a specific kind of discrepancy. Here is the discrepancy. The ANAP-10 generates a radar track, a precise position derived from the electromagnetic return of a hull in the water. Meanwhile, the AIS network is generating a broadcast position, what the ship's transponder claims it is and where it claims to be. In normal traffic, those two data sources agree. The radar track and the AIS position overlap within acceptable margins. The ship is where it says it is, moving at the speed it says it's moving, heading where it says it's heading. For 9 contacts in the lane right now, that's exactly what the P-8A is seeing. Clean correlation, green lights down the board. For one contact, there's a mismatch. The radar return shows a large displacement hull, deep draft, heavy, at a position and heading that doesn't match any AIS contact in that zone. The closest AIS match, the supposed Maltese chemical carrier, is plotted 4.3 nautical miles east of where the radar says this hull actually is. The ghost is real. The ghost has a shape, and the ghost cannot lie to radar because radar doesn't read transponders. Radar reads the physical world. A hull that big displaces that much water and returns that much electromagnetic energy. You cannot fake it. You can only try to hide it. And there's nowhere to hide in the Gulf of Oman at noon on a clear day with a P-8A overhead. What the Poseidon crew doesn't know yet is that this tanker is not running alone. 38 nautical miles southwest, a second contact has just gone AAS dark. Smaller, likely a product tanker, maybe 150 meters, running at 14 knots on a parallel course. It's not in the primary lane. It's threading the edge of a zone typically used by fishing traffic out of Muscat. A smart choice because fishing boats don't have AS requirements in that area. So a hull going dark in that corridor triggers less automated flagging. This is a two-ship run, one decoy, one runner, toward runners betting that a single patrol aircraft can only chase one contact at a time. It's a reasonable bet. Against a helicopter or a surface ship, it might even work. The Poseidon crew has both contacts simultaneously. They've always had both contacts. The radar doesn't choose. It sees everything in its 200-mile footprint. Both anomalies are logged, time-stamped, geolocated, and passed down the Link 16 data link within 90 seconds of the second contact going dark. Link 16 is the NATO Tactical Data Network, the shared digital picture that connects aircraft, ships, and shore stations in near real time. When the Poseidon tags a contact, every asset on that network sees the tag simultaneously. This is the part of the kill chain that looks effortless from the outside, but represents decades of hard-won architecture. No radio call, no hey destroyer. Check out bearing 270. The data flows automatically. The picture updates. The Arleigh Burke-class destroyer USS Chung-hoon, holding station 55 nautical miles west, sees both ghost contacts appear on its combat display with position, course, speed, and anomaly confidence rating, without anyone picking up a radio. Here's the unpopular take, and it's worth sitting with. Most public discussion about naval power still defaults to the ship, the hull, the gun, the missile, as the decisive unit. That's increasingly the wrong frame. The decisive unit in 2026 is the sensor-to-shooter data link. The P-8A doesn't intercept the tanker. It doesn't even need to get close. Its job is to generate a precise, credible, legally actionable target designation and hand it to the asset that can act. The Poseidon is not a weapon. It's the eye that makes every weapon coherent. The tanker captain almost certainly knew a P-8A was in the area. Maritime patrol schedules aren't entirely secret, and Iranian naval intelligence tracks U.S. aircraft deployments in the Gulf as a matter of routine. What he probably underestimated is how completely the sensor architecture defeats the anonymity that AIS spoofing is supposed to provide. He bet that being invisible in the data was enough. He was wrong by 4.3 nautical miles. The USS Chung-hoon comes to intercept heading. At 31 knots, the destroyer closes on the Primacy's contact, while the Poseidon continues monitoring the second contact to the southwest. The Chung-hoon's AN/SPY-6 air and missile defense radar picks up the tanker at 42 nautical miles, well beyond visual range, and the fire control. Picture locks. No weapons are targeted. The lock is for tracking, but the tanker's crew, if they have a radar warning receiver worth anything, now know a warship radar has them painted at 42 miles and isn't going away. Put yourself in the captain's position for a moment. You've been running dark for 6 hours. You're 40 miles from the strait. The cover is holding, and then your instruments tell you a destroyer-class radar has you at 42 miles and it's closing. At what point does the calculation shift from push through to this isn't the run? For this captain, it shifts here, but not immediately. The problem is that the Chung-hoon isn't close enough yet to legally execute a boarding under the rules of engagement governing this blockade. Maritime interception operations require conformity with international maritime law. In practice, that means closing to communication range, issuing the standard challenge, and giving the vessel an opportunity to comply before a boarding team goes over the rail. The Poseidon has done its job. The data link has done its job, but the physical stop requires a ship to actually get there. The tanker knows this. It accelerates, 14 knots, now 16. A laden VLCC-class tanker can't outrun a destroyer. The Chung-hoon's sustained speed is over 30 knots. But the captain may be calculating something else. If he can push far enough toward the strait before the intercept, he enters a zone of ambiguity around Iranian territorial water claims that complicates the boarding politically. Even if it doesn't complicate it legally, it doesn't work. At 19 nautical miles, the Chung-hoon has the tanker in visual range through its electro-optical systems and issues the maritime challenge on Channel 16. No response. Standard procedure. A second challenge in Farsi. Still nothing. The destroyer's MH-60R Seahawk helicopter is now airborne, circling the tanker at 500 feet, the downdraft from its rotors visible on the tanker's deck. Bridge windows are visible. There are faces behind them. On the third challenge, the tanker's AIS comes back online. But now it's broadcasting the correct identity. The ghost is gone. What remains is a vessel registered to a UAE company whose beneficial ownership traces, within 48 hours, to a network connected to Iranian oil trading. But right now, in this moment, the captain has made his decision. The engine telegraph comes back to slow ahead. The vessel heaves to. One boarding team. 6 personnel from the Chung-hoon's visit, board, search and seizure element, cross-decked by the MH-60R Seahawk. They are on the tanker's deck in 11 minutes. 0 rounds fired. The second ghost contact, the smaller product tanker threading the fishing lane, has been monitoring the radio traffic. By the time the boarding team is on the primary vessel, the second ship has reversed course and is making best speed back toward Iranian waters. The Poseidon tracks it all the way to the 12 nautical mile limit and logs the exit. It won't complete this run today. Whether it tries again tomorrow is a different question. Below decks on the primary tanker, the cargo manifests tell a story the crew can't easily explain. The cargo is crude, not chemicals as the spoofed AAS identity suggested. The volume is consistent with a full load from a loading point on the Iranian coast. The ship's log has gaps. The crew's personal devices have been wiped. These are not the behaviors of a legitimate commercial operator. The cargo is logged, the vessel held for further inspection, and the data fed back into the intelligence picture CENTCOM uses to track the shadow fleet's patterns, routes, and timing. Here's the detail that stuck with me when I went through the open-source reporting on how these blockade operations actually work. The goal of logging the cargo isn't just this shipment, it's the pattern. Every interdiction teaches the picture, which routes the shadow fleet is using, at what time of day, in what weather, with what cover identity. Each stop tightens the model. The Cordon learns from every run it catches. The tanker captain had one run. CENTCOM got a data point it will use indefinitely. The P-8A crew lands at their forward operating location 7 hours after takeoff. They never fired a weapon. They never got within visual range of the tanker. Their contribution to this intercept was a radar return, a data comparison, and a Link 16 transmission that took less than 2 seconds. 2 seconds of data. That's what unraveled a 6-hour deception operation. Would this have worked differently 5 years ago? Probably not much, because the P-8A has been flying the Gulf for over a decade. What has changed is the density of the sensor architecture and the speed of the data fusion. The AN-SY-6 radar on the Chung-hoon is a full generation beyond the SY-1 systems it replaced. It tracks smaller targets at longer ranges in higher, clutter environments. The Link 16 integration means the Poseidon and the destroyer function as a single sensors organism even when they're 55 nautical miles apart. The sum is significantly greater than the parts. Here's the take that'll probably get some pushback in the comments. The shadow fleet is not going to stop. The economics are too compelling, and the detection risk, even now, is not 100%. The vessels that don't get caught don't make the news. The 10 ships turned back are the visible data point, and they're supposed to be visible because deterrence requires visibility. But the parallel question, how many ships got through before the P-8A was on station, or on a day when weather-degraded radar performance, or when 2 incidents were happening simultaneously and only 1 asset was available? That question doesn't get answered in press releases. Comment yes if you think the blockade holds long-term. No if you think the shadow fleet adapts faster than the sensor net can tighten. Before we close out, there's one thing about AIS spoofing that almost nobody outside the maritime intelligence community talks about, and it reframes the whole picture. AIS spoofing is not actually hard. Commercial AIS transmitters are available for under $500. Reprogramming one to broadcast a false MSI identity, the unique vessel identifier, requires software tools freely available online. The barrier to entry for the basic technique is genuinely low. What's hard is sustaining the deception against a layered sensor environment, because AIS spoofing only defeats AIS verification. It does nothing about radar. It does nothing about satellite imagery. It does nothing about synthetic aperture radar that can image a hull's exact dimensions from orbit and cross-reference them against the vessel class you're claiming to be. It does nothing about behavioral analysis, your speed, your heading, your historical route pattern. It does nothing about an AMP-I-10 crew running a radar-to-AIS correlation at 26,000 feet. The tanker captain's mistake wasn't the spoof. The spoof was technically competent. His mistake was the model, the assumption that defeating AIS verification was enough. He was fighting the last war. He built a paper disguise in a world that reads physics. A blockade in the modern Gulf is not decided by the gun on the destroyer. It's decided by the patrol plane that spots the lie in the data, the one contact whose radar return doesn't match its broadcast, the one hull that physics won't let hide. The eye comes first. The kill chain starts there. By the time a warship is in the picture, the outcome is already settled. The Strait of Hormuz is 21 miles wide at its narrowest point. 20% of the world's sea-borne oil moves through it. The asset that controls it in 2026 is not the ship with the biggest gun. It's the aircraft with the clearest picture, and right now, that picture belongs to CENTCOM. The Cordon holds. Ship 11 is logged. The P-8A is already back on station, orbiting, watching. If you want to understand what happens when Iran escalates from shadow fleet economics to direct action, fast boats, Shahid drones, anti-ship missiles, that scenario is coming next. Drop a comment if you want it. And if this breakdown gave you something, the subscribe button is right there. It's the only thing that keeps this operation running.